Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
A landmark presidential case. The Supreme Court hearing oral arguments in the Colorado ballot challenge that'll decide former President Trump's eligibility for 2024. We bring you highlights from the hearing.
An investigation into President Biden's handling of classified documents has wrapped up. The Attorney General's not mentioning charges. What's next in this case?
Chinese hackers lurking inside key U.S. infrastructure for at least 5 years. A new report details the dangers they pose and how they found their way in.
A spike in Chinese nationals crossing illegally into the U.S. from Mexico. How TikTok is playing a role in the surge.
Archaeologists in Denmark discover a 2,000-year-old engraved blade. Some say it could be one of the oldest found in the country to date.
A mysterious shipwreck washing up on Canada's shores. We bring you how researchers are trying to learn more about the 19th century vessel and why it sank.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
A tragic update on the crashed helicopter carrying 5 Marines. Officials now confirming those 5 soldiers are dead.
They were conducting a training exercise flying from Nevada to California when the helicopter went missing. Authorities later located the remains of the aircraft near Pine Valley, California.
The Marines' identity have not been shared, and an investigation is underway. And a big drop from U.S. national security agencies. Chinese hackers could have disrupted U.S. oil pipelines and water controls. These hackers have breached computer networks of water, energy, and transportation facilities across the U.S., including in Guam. And they've had access to that critical infrastructure for at least 5 years. This could have allowed them to target U.S. water and energy systems.
The vulnerability could prove useful for Beijing in times of war. FBI Director Christopher Wray warned last week that China aims to use cyber attacks to take down America's power grid and oil pipelines during a potential conflict with Taiwan.
Steps China was taking, in other words, to find and prepare to destroy or degrade the civilian critical infrastructure that keeps us safe and prosperous.
The Chinese hacking group is called Vault Typhoon. Officials said they cut off the hackers' access to the systems, but warn this group could keep trying to find new ways in.
The information comes from an advisory published by U.S. securities agencies, including the FBI and the National Security Agency. Officials in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand also contributed to the report due to concerns that China is targeting their infrastructure as well.
The advisory said Chinese hackers found their way in by targeting vulnerabilities in routers and firewalls in the water and energy systems. They stole administrator credentials used to maintain the systems. In some cases, hackers got their hands on the surveillance cameras at some critical facilities.
Zooming out, critical infrastructure in the U.S. has been bugged by security problems such as poor password management and a lack of security updates. There's also a shortage of money for hiring security services. U.S. cyber officials are urging the infrastructure operators to install timely software updates.
And over 100 websites disguised as local news outlets have been traced back to a public relations firm of the Chinese Communist Party.
A University of Toronto-based digital watchdog found a global influence campaign pushing Chinese regime content. Websites in 30 countries are mixing CCP propaganda with local news. The websites are set up to look like local media outlets. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg reports.
Digital watchdog Citizen Lab found pro-Chinese regime articles and propaganda being pushed on 123 websites in 30 countries under the cover of local news. Chinese Communist Party content is mixed in with local headlines, with content shifting between conspiracy theories about the U.S. and its allies to articles attacking CCP critics. The new report from the Toronto-based group released Wednesday dubs the campaign Paper Wall. Researchers say the websites are quickly multiplying, with an adaptiveness to local languages and content, and warn of a heightened risk of inadvertent amplification by local media and target audiences, despite having low reach so far. Citizen Lab traced the network to CCP public relations firm Haimai and says the influence campaign started in 2020. Most of the content Citizen Lab found was from a press release service called Times Newswire. Analysts at cybersecurity firm Mandiant found Times Newswire at the root of another CCP influence operation targeting U.S. audiences last year. Tech giant Meta last year reported China's influence operations were the most notable change in the threat landscape since 2020, and that operations were on the rise and expanding well beyond Asia. Citizen Lab dug deeper into the network after a series of the sites popped up in South Korea and Italy. South Korea's National Security Center exposed 18 of the sites in a report in November, also linking the operation to Haimai. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And to help us understand this, we're joined live by CEO of Black Ops Partners, Kelce Fleming. Thank you for your time, Kelce. You're an expert on what's called unrestricted warfare by the Chinese Communist Party. Tell us about that and how it relates to media influence operations like this one.
Unrestricted warfare is the war that we are all in today, and it's everything short of conventional warfare, in other words, bombs, troops, and so on, to weaken your enemy. And this is cognitive, a piece of it called cognitive warfare, which is influence operations, propaganda, and so on. So it's meant to weaken your enemy, which would be the United States and all of our free world allies, in the eyes of the rest of the world, and to gain traction with our allies, so they would be more pro-China, more pro-CCP, and anti-US.
And Kelce, what's the scope of this? And is there an example of this kind of media influence operation here in the US?
Yeah, there's one I can think of. It's called TikTok. TikTok is a CCP weaponized military application that is used exactly for these purposes: psychological warfare and cognitive warfare.
Yeah, and you're talking about this type of warfare. How does this function? How do these websites influence people in the U.S.?
Well, it presents an alternate reality. It presents propaganda as truth, and the things that you know to be true are deemed false. So you keep repetitively hitting people with this information, and I'm speaking about adults. When you're talking to kids or when you're influencing children, everything they see on the internet is true, right? So you have to understand the power of that weapon of TikTok and other applications that are pushing this propaganda, this change of American values with our children. And it's also changing their psychological wavelength, the way that they think, the way that they process data, and the way that they critically think as well. In other words, they don't critically think anymore because they rely upon this weaponized application called TikTok.
Okay, so you've spelled out the intentions of the Chinese Communist Party, but from the perspective of the law, are things like this illegal?
They are not illegal, and they absolutely should be. So, American people, British people, Canadian people, all of our allies need to be pushing their governments to completely ban this type of influence of our people. It's control, it's power, it's control, it's surveillance, it's everything that we don't want in a free world, and it's meant to control our populations and basically win the war without fighting.
Now, of course, freedom of speech is an important thing we cherish here in the U.S. What kind of move would what kind of effect would that kind of law have on freedom of speech? Freedom
of speech underlies and underpins our democracy and our Constitution, so it must be protected. But it doesn't say anything about foreign influence. And we didn't have technology back when or that we can speak of, that we have today when the Constitution was written. So it must be interpreted. Laws must be passed to ban any type of foreign influence. Now, internal influence is, it's free speech, but it also can't be driven by foreign influence.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. And what can the U.S. government or other Western countries yet do to counter this kind of activity?
Well, this is cyber warfare also. It's under the heading of cyber warfare. It's cognitive warfare. That's the blend that they're using. Psychological warfare is another blend that they're using in these narratives to push their propaganda. So we can, first of all, ban that information, ban those sites, and lock them down with the U.S. And our free world nations, because I promise you, the Chinese Communist Party has banned all of our information and all of our influence operations into China. So why would we allow it into the United States and to our free world allies?
And just in closing here, Casey, what can people do to distinguish and recognize this kind of news outlet? I mean, what are the obvious signs to look for?
Well, the big indication is it's pro-CCP, that they can do no wrong, and then it's anti-US. So it's pretty easy to spot, especially when you're an adult. But when you're a child in middle school, high school, and even a young adult in college, it's different to distinguish when you've been seeing it all day, every day, while you've been on TikTok and some of these other apps. You're also seeing it in other media enterprises that are replaying this information as well. So it's important. If it's very pro-CCP and pro-China and it's anti-US or anti-UK or anti-Canada, Australia, then you know something is up.
All right, Casey Fleming, CEO of Black Ops Partners, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the southern border is seeing an over 1,000% spike in illegal Chinese crossings. How does TikTok tie into the surge? NTD's Tiffany Meyer tells us more.
One of the fastest growing groups crossing into the border now are illegal Chinese immigrants. And some of them have found a border gap with help from videos shared on the Chinese version of TikTok. That's according to a report from CBS. Numbers of illegal Chinese crossers are hitting a record high. Over 24,000 of them entered the country illegally last year. That's a 1,000% spike compared to the year before. And over 18,000 already came in through the border this year as of February. Some are fleeing China's plunging economy or human rights abuses back home, but U.S. lawmakers have another concern in mind. Over 90% of illegal Chinese immigrants in 2023 are single adults. Officials argue they could engage in espionage activities.
Is the PRC exploiting the crisis at our southern border for their own personal gain?
I think we should assume that any vulnerabilities at our southern border are open for authoritarian influence of many kinds. I think that's a safe assumption. If the gaps are there, then those who are working against us are going to use them to their advantage.
Many Chinese immigrants looking to illegally cross the U.S. border first fly to Ecuador because it doesn't require visas. From there, they go to Tijuana, a city in Mexico. From there, they pay smugglers just a few $100 for a drive to a gap in the border.
That's where TikTok comes into play. The CBS report said videos on the platform have detailed instructions for how to get to the border hole. TikTok is owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance. The app has become massively popular in the U.S., but has also sparked controversies. Over 30 U.S. states have banned TikTok from government-issued devices due to security and data collection concerns, while some fear the app pushes dangerous content toward children.
Coming up, a landmark presidential election case. The Supreme Court hearing oral arguments in the Colorado ballot challenge that'll decide former President Trump's eligibility for 2024. We bring you highlights from the hearing.
Section 3 cannot be used to exclude a presidential candidate from the ballot, even if that candidate is disqualified from serving as president under Section 3.
We all know that words have power.
They set things in motion
and make us happy or sad.
But there's one word that stands out because when people say it, lives are changed.
It's not a big word.
It's itsy bitsy.
It's only 3 little letters.
But when you say it,
the life of a kid like me can be changed.
So, what is this special word?
It may surprise you.
It's yes!
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 Yes to becoming a monthly supporter of Shriners Hospitals for Children.
That's right. Your monthly support allows the doctors and nurses at Shriners Hospitals for Children to give the most amazing care anywhere and change the lives of kids like me.
And me.
And me.
Because people like you have said yes. Now I can play football.
And I can play catch.
And I can walk.
So what do you say? Will you say yes right now?
It's so easy.
All you have to do is pick up the phone or go to loveshriners.org right now and say yes. When you say yes to giving just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of all the kids you're helping every day. My life is filled with possibility because of the monthly support of people just like you who called the number on your screen and said yes.
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 Your yes is making a difference in my life and the lives of so many other kids like me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, call again or go to loveshriners.org to say yes right away.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel actually an effect, and I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times, and so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it, and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference, because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours, and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
Join us on NTD Good Morning because we want you to stay informed.
Kickstart your morning with the latest you missed overnight.
Right, and don't forget that inspiration.
Absolutely, so let's shine some light on the good news too.
Tune in every weekday morning to NTD News.
Can former President Trump be barred from running for office under the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause? The Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments in a landmark case that started in Colorado. Here are highlights from Trump's lawyer and his exchange with justices.
The Colorado Supreme Court held that President Donald J. Trump is constitutionally disqualified from serving as president under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. The Colorado Supreme Court's decision is wrong and should be reversed for numerous independent reasons. The first reason is that President Trump is not covered by Section 3 because the president is not an officer of the United States, as that term is used throughout the Constitution. Officer of the United States refers only to appointed officials, and it does not encompass elected individuals such as the president or members of Congress. This is clear from the Commissions Clause, the Impeachment Clause, and the Appointments Clause, each of which uses officers of the United States to refer only to appointed and not elected officials. The second reason is that Section 3 cannot be used to exclude a presidential candidate from the ballot, even if that candidate is disqualified from serving as president under Section 3, because Congress can lift that disability after the candidate is elected, but before he takes office. A state cannot exclude any candidate for federal office from the ballot on account of Section 3, and any state that does so is violating the holding of term limits by altering the Constitution's qualifications for federal office. The Colorado Supreme Court's decision is no different from a state residency law that requires members of Congress to inhabit the state prior to Election Day, when the Constitution requires only that members of Congress inhabit the state that they represent when elected. In both situations, a state is accelerating the deadline to meet a constitutionally imposed qualification and is thereby violating the holding of term limits. And in this situation, a ruling from this court that affirms the decision below would not only violate term limits, but take away the votes of potentially tens of millions of Americans. I welcome the court's questions.
Mr. Mitchell, would you, you didn't spend much time on your argument with respect to whether or not Section 3 is self-executing. So would you address that? And in doing that, your argument is that it's not self-executing, but then in that case, what would the role of the state be? Or is it entirely up to Congress to implement the disqualification in Section 3?
It is entirely up to Congress, Justice Thomas, and our argument goes beyond actually saying that Section 3 is non-self-executing. We need to say something more than that, because a non-self-executing treaty or a non-self-executing constitutional provision normally can still be enforced by a state if it chooses to enact legislation. The holding of Griffin's case goes beyond even that by saying that a state is not allowed to implement or enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment unless and until Congress enacts implementing legislation allowing it to do so. So under Griffin's case, which we believe is correctly decided, the Anderson litigants disagree with us on that point. But if this court were to adhere to the holding of Griffin's case, there would not be any role for the states in enforcing Section 3 unless Congress were to enact a statute that gives them that authority.
Counsel, what if somebody came into a state Secretary of State's office and said, I took the oath specified in Section 3, I participated in an insurrection, and I want to be on the ballot. Does the Secretary of State have the authority in that situation to say, no, you're disqualified?
No, the Secretary of State could not do that consistent with term limits, because even if the candidate is an admitted insurrectionist, Section 3 still allows the candidate to run for office and even win election to office, and then see whether Congress lifts that disability after the election. This happened frequently in the wake of the 14th Amendment, where Confederate insurrectionists were elected to Congress, and sometimes they obtained a waiver, sometimes they did not, and each House would determine for itself whether to seat that elected insurrectionist, because each House is the sole judge of the qualifications of its members. So if a state banned even an admitted insurrectionist from the ballot, it would be adding to and altering the Constitution's qualifications for office, because under Section 3, the candidate need only qualify during the time the candidate holds the office to which he's been elected. And under Your Honor's hypothetical, the Secretary of State would be demanding, essentially, that the candidate obtain a waiver from Congress earlier than the candidate needs to obtain that waiver.
Well, even though it's pretty unlikely, or at least would be difficult for an individual who says, you know, I am an insurrectionist and I had taken the oath, that would require 2/3 of votes in Congress, right?
Correct.
Well, this is a pretty unlikely scenario.
It may be unlikely, but no Secretary of State is permitted to predict the likelihood of a waiver, because in doing so, they're adding a new qualification to the ability to run for Congress. And the proper analogy, Mr. Chief Justice, is to state residency laws, because the Constitution says that a member of Congress must inhabit the state that he represents when elected. And the lower courts have all held, in reliance on term limits, that a state election official cannot move that deadline any earlier by requiring the candidate for Congress to inhabit the state.
Mr. Mitchell, if I may interrupt, but just to clarify, I mean, this sounds like your reply brief, where it sounds like you're not making a constitutional argument, you're really making a statutory preemption argument. And is that what you're doing here? You're not saying that the Constitution gives you this rule. It's the kind of combination of Griffin's case plus the way Congress acted after Griffin's case that gives you the rule?
That's exactly right, Justice Kagan, because we have implementing legislation. Congress took up the invitation provided by Griffin's case and established writs of quo warranto in the 1870 Enforcement Act, later repealed them. The only enforcement legislation that's currently on the books is the Insurrection Criminal Statute, Section 2383. And when Congress made all of these decisions, the initial enactment of the Enforcement Act in 1870, the repeal of the quo warranto provisions in 1948, all of those were made with Griffin's case as the backdrop.
Please.
Well, the understanding was that these congressionally established remedies would be exclusive of state court remedies. So there's not an express statement of preemption in these statutes, but there didn't need to be, because Griffin's case provided the backdrop.
And if I could just understand the argument a little bit better, suppose that we took all of that away. You know, suppose there were no Griffin's case and there were no subsequent congressional enactment. What do you then think the rule would be?
So just as a matter of first principles without Griffin's case, it's a much harder argument for us to make, because normally, I mean, every other provision of the 14th Amendment has been treated as self-executing. What we would argue in that hypothetical that Your Honor has suggested is that there are practical considerations unique to Section 3 that counsel in favor of a rule similar to what Chief Justice Chase spelled out in Griffin's case. And it goes to, I think, the policy concerns he talks about, where this was a case, Griffin's case involved a convicted criminal who was seeking a writ of habeas corpus on the ground that the judge who tried his case was an insurrectionist disqualified under Section 3. And Chief Justice Chase realizes that if he enforces Section 3 in this situation, it would nullify every official act taken not only by this particular judge, but by anyone who is an insurrectionist or arguably an insurrectionist under Section 3.
Well,
and that was
why do you need those consequential concerns, though? I mean, it kind of seems to me that what Justice Kagan is getting at is why don't you have an argument that the Constitution of its own force, that Section 3 of its own force preempts the state's ability not necessarily, I think, not to enforce Section 3 against its own officers, but against federal officers, like in a Tarbell's case kind of way.
So there could also be an argument that's more limited. You're suggesting there may be a barrier under the Constitution to a state legislating an enforcement mechanism for Section 3 specific to federal officers. We could rely on precedents such as McClung that says that state courts lack the authority to issue mandamus relief against federal officials.
Well,
and
why
extend
aren't
that
you
principle
making those
here.
arguments?
Because that doesn't get us, that Griffin's
That
case
only
goes,
gets you out of state court, doesn't get you out of federal court.
and also the holding of Griffin's case went well beyond that, because Chief Justice Chase said in this opinion, which again provided the backdrop for the congressional enforcement legislation, that states had no role in enforcing Section 3 unless Congress was to give them that authority through a statute that they passed pursuant to their Section 5
But your arguments...
No, please, go ahead.
I was just going to add one last thing. I think your argument's a little broader than that, because I think if we accept your position that disqualifying someone from the ballot is adding a qualification, really your position is that Congress can't enact a statute that would allow Colorado to do what it's done either, because then Congress would be adding a qualification, which it can't do either.
No, I don't agree with that, Justice Barrett. Congress is not bound by the holding of term limits. Term limits only prohibits the states from adding additional qualifications or altering the Constitution's qualifications for federal office. It does not purport to restrain Congress. So if Congress were to enact implementing legislation that authorized the states to exclude insurrectionists from the ballot, we believe that would be valid enforcement legislation under Section 3, with an important caveat. There has to be congruence and proportionality under this court's precedent. So
why would that be permissible? Because Section 3 refers to the holding of office, not running for office. And so if a state or Congress were to go further and say that you can't run for the office, you can't compete in a primary, wouldn't that be adding an additional qualification for serving for president? You must have been free from this disqualification at an earlier point in time than Section 3 specifies.
I think the answer to your question, Justice Alito, depends on how you interpret the word enforce in Section 5. And some members of this court, such as Justice Scalia, thought that enforce means you can do nothing more than enact legislation that mirrors the 14th Amendment's self-executing requirements, and you can't go an inch beyond that. That's not the current jurisprudence of this court.
No, well, all right, you have to decide whether it's congruent and proportional, and we would get into the question of whether that would be congruent and proportional. Well, let me shift gear a little bit. I take you to argue, and I think this is right, that the term self-executing is a misnomer as applied here.
Yes,
very often, when we use the term, what we're referring to is the proposition that a particular provision of the Constitution or a statute in and of itself creates a private right of action. That's not what the issue is here.
No, that's not the issue here. And sometimes the phrase self-executing is used that way. The only thing I would add is sometimes it's used in a different sense. With self-executing treaties or non-self-executing treaties, the issue is whether that treaty has any force as domestic law whatsoever.
Right. But I don't see what is gained by using this term, which is used in different contexts, rather than directly addressing what's involved here, which is the question of who can enforce Section 3 with respect to a presidential candidate. The consequences of what the Colorado Supreme Court did, some people claim, would be quite severe. Would it not permit, would it not lead to the possibility that other states would say, using their choice of law rules and their rules on collateral estoppel, that there's non-mutual collateral estoppel against former President Trump? And so the decision of the Colorado Supreme Court could effectively decide this question for many other states, perhaps all other states. Could it not lead to that consequence?
I don't think so, because Colorado law does not recognize non-mutual collateral estoppel, and I believe the preclusive effect of the decision would be determined by Colorado law rather than the law of another state. But I think your question, Justice Alito, gives rise to an even greater concern, because if this decision does not have preclusive effect in other lawsuits, it opens the possibility that a different factual record could be developed in some of the litigation that occurs in other states, and different factual findings could be entered by state trial court judges. They might conclude that, as a matter of fact, that President Trump did not have any intent to engage in incitement, or make some other finding that differs from what this trial court judge found.
Yeah, exactly. So in this decision, the trial court in Colorado thought that it was proper to admit the January 6th report, and it also admitted the testimony of an expert who testified about the meaning of certain words and phrases to people who communicate with and among extremists, right? Another state court could reach an opposite conclusion on both of those questions.
Certainly. Other states could conclude that the January 6th report is inadmissible hearsay. They might also conclude that statements within the January 6th report were hearsay, even if the report itself is not. And they could certainly reach a different conclusion with respect to the expert testimony of Professor Simi. Perhaps in another state we would have time to produce our own sociology expert who would contradict Professor Simi.
Should these considerations be dismissed as simply consequentialist arguments, or do they support a structural argument that supports the position that you're taking here?
I think they all mutually reinforce each other. We have an argument, we believe, that is sufficient to dispose of this case just based on the meaning of officer of the United States, as well as the argument we're making based on term limits.
Coming up, presidential candidate Nikki Haley staying optimistic. She's downplaying her loss to none of the above in Tuesday's Nevada primary. Hear why her campaign has known for months it wouldn't spend a day or a dollar in Nevada.
And a group of state attorneys general are calling out the Biden administration for suspending liquefied natural gas exports. Here there are concerns as Senator Joe Manchin calls a hearing today to investigate the decision. We'll have the details soon when we return.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen-Yun.
23 سال 16 سال عمري ما هفت
اما داعش کردی ام برانبر خوشکو دایکانی ازدی اما کاری که دور لهمو چمک دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارو خی که است های به تایبت لایران خوشکوریا بشه که دگره تو با حالانه که اداره اوباما که
مریم بو او هفت روز من بو و داعش ذکرت تامبوم كرا قوتينيز قريا بما متشكر بهار فيدان نبو باوان رحم نبو قدامنا سؤالان من خادران نزل باوان ورستم بس منا قو بس ناش بجوش باش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارود وان همو جيبرن تي حملي زارود الدم واسسي وان همو جيبرن
وحشیگریه که توا عیاره ظلمی که یک جار گرگوره لم افرطانه کرا و تعدایی که زور زوریان میده که همانه روزانه دست فروشی ده.
Imagine being a child, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
The tempting online world is encroaching on our campus. Is unplugging cables and confiscating phones the solution to protect our children? No, we just need a clean multimedia platform. Join Ganjing Campus to leverage premium channel features, professional development courses, and kindness event toolkits tailored for teachers. Build a truly positive and interactive classroom community. Foster a pure and delightful learning environment for children.
And here to discuss the Colorado ballot case against former President Trump, we have John Malcolm, VP of the Heritage Foundation's Institute for Constitutional Government and Director of the Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. John, welcome. From a legal standpoint, what are the most cogent arguments that are being made on both sides?
Well, the arguments are going on right now. The justices appear to be very, very concerned about how individual states could make a determination about who is on the ballot and who isn't on the ballot and what standards they would use. They're asking a lot of tough questions about saying, well, this judge in this state could admit evidence that leads to this conclusion, and this judge could exclude evidence that would lead to an opposite conclusion, and you would end up having mayhem. They're also pointing out to the fact that no states have disqualified federal officials from running for office in the past, and isn't that built into the fabric of this constitutional provision? The main arguments that are being made by former President Trump's lawyers are that he does not qualify as an officer of the United States under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, that officers of the United States refers to people who are appointed by the president and not the president himself. There was also a lot of arguments about whether or not this provision is self-executing, meaning can states implement this provision, or does it require an act of Congress to set out the parameters that one would use before reaching the determination that somebody has engaged in an insurrection or rebellion?
And how do you assess the matchup of these various arguments?
Well, it's always hard to tell from how an argument is going. I don't sense an overwhelming amount of sympathy for the Colorado Supreme Court's or the Colorado Solicitor General's position so far, but it's been a very interesting argument, and I expect they'll reach a decision soon. I would be very, very, very surprised if at the end of the day Donald Trump is in fact disqualified from the ballot, but we'll see.
Now, how could this case influence the Supreme Court's standing in the eyes of the public? And that could that potentially influence their decision, do you think?
It shouldn't. And I know that in the minds of some of the justices, it might. But, their job is they have life tenure for a reason. There's a provision that says that their pay can't be reduced. So as long as they can't be fired and they can't have their pay reduced, they're supposed to focus on the law and not what is popular or unpopular. Many people on the left have done a lot to try to delegitimize this court because they're not happy with a lot of the decisions that the court has issued recently. Suffice it to say, with respect to this case, about half the country will be happy with the decision and about half the country will be unhappy with the decision.
Right. And what is the significance of the case both for this upcoming election and for future presidents? Well, it will decide, as a matter of first impression about whether a state has the right to make a determination about who can run for president or not. And you might get some people who say that President Biden is not enforcing our nation's immigration laws, and what is essentially happening at the southern border is tantamount to a rebellion, and therefore he should be disqualified from the ballot. Sort of open up Pandora's box for all of these kinds of questions. With respect to this election, obviously, if President Trump is disqualified from the ballot, it would have a dramatic impact on the election because he is the current frontrunner for the Republican nomination. And we've already seen a challenge to President Biden of that sort based on his policies at the border. Now, I just want to look at the Colorado district judge. She's argued that President Trump effectively used coded language that incited or approved of an insurrection, she says. If that reasoning stands in the Supreme Court, what could be the impact of future legal cases involving activists and advocates? Well, I think that was one of the line of questions the justices were asking, which is to say, hey, this judge admitted the January 6th report. They admitted this funky-dunky expert who was determining coded language of President Trump's words and tweets.
What if some other judge said, well, this guy isn't an expert on anything, and the entire January 6th report is hearsay, and barred it? You would end up having chaos. But look, I think if this is all accepted and it's determined that it was an insurrection, that President Trump engaged in it, and that he is disqualified from the ballot, it will open up courtrooms to all sorts of activists making all sorts of arguments and offering all sorts of so-called experts.
All right, John Malcolm, VP of Heritage Foundation's Institute for Constitutional Government, thank you so much for your time.
Good to be with you.
Presidential candidate Nikki Haley is making light of her loss to none of the above in Tuesday's Nevada primary. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the candidate, who says she's already looking ahead to the primary in her home state of South Carolina.
Haley called the Nevada primary a scam, speaking on Fox 11 Los Angeles.
We knew months ago that we weren't going to spend a day or a dollar in Nevada because it wasn't worth it.
Haley says her campaign didn't even count Nevada, and the state wasn't something they were looking at.
Our focus is on South Carolina, Michigan, Super Tuesday. So if you look what we did in Iowa and you look what we did in New Hampshire, we're continuing to grow. That's what matters.
University of Nevada Associate Professor Rebecca Gill says Haley losing to the none of these candidates ballot option was in part due to a media campaign by Trump allies. She brings up the head of the Nevada Republican Party, who she says promoted the idea in interviews and speeches.
Coming out and saying, we're going to run this caucus, we're going to be able to guarantee that Trump will get all of Nevada's delegates, and also you should vote in the primary against Nikki Haley.
Gill feels Haley should have invested more in the state and tried to activate more moderate Republicans.
I think they really underestimated the danger for her, because it's easy to say, Trump's not in this primary, so clearly we're going to win.
The second vote is a caucus on Thursday organized by the Nevada Republican Party with just Trump on that ballot. Only the winner of that caucus will receive any delegates, making Haley's defeat more symbolic than meaningful. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Hawaii is the latest state trying to block former President Trump from the state's 2024 ballot. A related bill has passed its first hurdle in the state legislature. Current state law doesn't allow Hawaii to remove Trump based on the insurrection clause in the 14th Amendment. Hawaii News Now reports that the state's Senate Judiciary Committee passed a bill that could change this.
The bill, which now advances to the full floor, would establish a process for the chief elections officer to disqualify Trump. According to Hawaii News Now, the bill drew over 300 complaints or negative testimonies, with only about 20 favoring it.
In other election news, the Biden campaign is now ramping up coordination with lawmakers to reach voters nationwide. Senior officials for the Biden campaign are meeting with House Democrats today.
That's to outline details of campaign plans after Super Tuesday. The campaign aides will discuss their general election message and outlook for the year. They'll also focus on how lawmakers can help activate and engage supporters.
House Democrats are in Northern Virginia for their annual retreat. President Biden will travel there later today to deliver his own message to lawmakers. And a Justice Department investigation into President Biden's handling of classified documents wrapped up on Wednesday. Attorney General Merrick Garland did not indicate if there were any criminal charges being brought. Here's what we know about the probe so far.
In a letter to congressional leaders, Garland said that a DOJ special counsel had completed his investigation into President Biden's handling of classified documents. The letter itself contained few details about the probe and made no mention of charges. Special counsel Robert Hur's investigation report was not included and is currently being reviewed by a White House legal team. Garland wrote, "I am committed to making as much of the special counsel's report public as possible." The investigation, which was almost a year long, focused on classified documents that were improperly retained by Biden from his time as a senator and as vice president to Obama. These documents were found at his home in Delaware and a private office at the Penn Biden Center think tank. The case is concluding as Biden's political opponent, former President Trump, is facing charges of mishandling classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate. The White House has sought to play down the comparison to Trump, saying that Biden promptly returned the documents when they were discovered.
President Biden taking heat for his administration's pause on approvals of liquefied natural gas exports. 22 Republican state attorneys general have banded together to warn the president that the LNG export moratorium is unlawful. In a letter to Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm and President Biden, the attorneys general list multiple federal laws they say the administration has violated. They called on the administration to change direction right away. The top state officials say that stopping the export of LNG could hurt the country's safety and economy and empower Iran and Russia. A top energy official is set today to defend the LNG pause at a Senate hearing called by Senator Joe Manchin. Manchin calls the export pause a political ploy to pander to climate activists at the expense of American workers, businesses, and U.S. allies.
Coming up, Spanish farmers continue their protests blocking streets and ports in northern Spain. It's part of a larger farmers' movement sweeping Europe, which in some areas have turned violent. We'll return with that and more after this break.
And what was life like for a soldier in the ancient Roman army? A new exhibition in London provides a glimpse through rare artifacts. More shortly here on NTD News Today.
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month. Only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs, by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити.
All we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani
потребують вашої допомоги.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to hungerstopsnow.org to help save lives today.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
These are all farmers. Maybe
No,
not
there's
this
not a
one.
farm anymore.
But here's a farm, right?
No, there's also not a farm anymore.
All these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
The government wants to control the food. So we don't eat meat, but we eat insects.
As the price of staples goes through the roof, people will say, I can't afford a steak anymore. So, all right, I'll eat your stupid crickets.
I'm going to bring you the most accurate and insightful information on NTD Newsroom. Join me weekdays right here on NTD News.
Welcome back. Spanish farmers protesting outside a parliament building against rising costs, bureaucracy, and competition from outside the EU. NTD's Don Ma has the story.
Spanish farmers protested on Thursday in front of a parliament building in the northern part of Spain. They protested against soaring costs, bureaucracy, and cheap competition from outside the European Union. In the northern city of Vitoria, in front of the Basque Country Regional Parliament, riot police is seen guarding the building. At the same time, elsewhere, Spanish farmers drove tractors through city streets, disrupting traffic. Dozens of tractors surrounded the regional parliament in Barcelona after their drivers spent the night in the city center. Traffic was disrupted in smaller cities all over the country, including central Avila and Antequera in the south. Spanish farmers have joined their peers from Germany, France, Italy, and Belgium, where protests have sometimes turned violent. Farmers across the EU say the rules to protect the environment make them less competitive than farmers in other regions. They also say they are choked by taxes and red tape. In Castellon, on Spain's eastern coast, farmers blocked the main entrance to the port with tractors, burning tires and staging a sit-down protest. Police agents removed the protesters one by one without violence, ending the blockade. The protest prompted the Spanish government to distribute an additional $290 million subsidy for as many as 140,000 farmers. Don Ma, NTD News.
The British Museum in London is hosting a new exhibition. It provides a glimpse into life in the Roman army. The show includes rare artifacts, including the only complete legionary shield in the world. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
The Roman Empire lasted for over half a millennium and included a quarter of the world's population. That success was built on one of history's greatest military powers, the Imperial Roman Army. This new exhibition at the British Museum in London chronicles the stories of its soldiers.
Legion Life in the Roman Army is an exhibition about the Roman Army, but it's told from the perspective of ordinary Roman soldiers. So stepping away from the kind of big man history that we often get with Roman archaeology about emperors and great battles.
The Roman Empire stretched from modern-day Britain to the Red Sea. More than 200 objects at the exhibition paint a picture of the empire's everyday soldiers.
So the exhibition brings together some of the most famous Roman military objects in the world, the only complete Roman scutum and the most complete Roman cuirass, that's a type of body armor, to kind of really mundane, leather tents.
The exhibition features the world's only surviving complete legionary shield. The iconic shape will be familiar to anyone with an interest in ancient Roman history.
So the scutum from Dura Europos in Syria is the only surviving complete Roman shield. I called it a scutum because that's a type of Roman shield that legionaries used. It's the most iconic type that everyone will recognize. It's rectangular and curved.
Roman life and history have fascinated us for centuries, but why does this long-gone period still interest us?
I mean, there has been a social media trend suggesting that men are obsessed with the Roman Empire, and I wonder whether there is a sense of masculinity and also the fall of that civilization precipitating what would now refer to as the Dark Ages that makes people think it was a height of civilization.
Legion, Life in the Roman Army, opens on February 1st and runs until June 23rd. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And archaeologists in Denmark have discovered an inscription on a blade they say dates back almost 2,000 years. Some say the engraving may be one of the oldest to be found in the country to date. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the artifact.
Archaeologists found this small blade under an urn at an Iron Age burial site near the city of Odense. The artifact was then brought to the city museum's conservation department.
It was here for like one and a half year, and one of our very good conservators were cleaning it, getting all the rust off it, the corrosion.
Their work revealed a small runic inscription on one side and an elaborate engraving on the other. 5 runes followed by 3 grooves have been interpreted to read Hirula, primitive Norse for little sword. Other items found at the burial site, including brooches, allowed the archaeologists to date the blade and its inscriptions to around 150 AD.
And these brooches are very sensible to fashion style, so they change rapidly. We know these kind of brooches all over the Iron Age, but they change appearance very quickly.
Runic writing was a system used across parts of Northern Europe from around the 2nd century AD. According to the museum curator, the knife likely belonged to someone with some status, since writing and reading skills were not likely widespread at that time.
They are rare of many reasons, I think. One of them is, of course, the preservation. We can see on the inscription that this writing is based on former writing. There has been runes before this, we just haven't found them.
Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The home of Chanel, Dior, and Louis Vuitton. France is renowned around the world for high-end fashion and luxury brands.
And that sense of style can certainly be seen in the medal designs for the upcoming Olympics in Paris this summer. Unveiled today, each medal features a piece of the Eiffel Tower's original iron structure.
Following renovation work during the 20th century, certain metallic elements were removed from the Eiffel Tower and have been carefully preserved ever since. They have now been repurposed to create the medal's hexagonal centerpiece, which is apparently a reference to France's geometric-like shape.
Behind the creation of the medal's renowned jeweler Maison Chaumet.
The president of the Paris 2024 organizing committee says they married the strongest symbol of the games, the medal, with the symbol of Paris and France around the world, the Eiffel Tower. And a mysterious shipwreck washing up on Canada's shores. A team of archaeologists is now working to learn more about the wreck, which is believed to date back to the 19th century. The ship's remains are located in Canada's Atlantic Island province of Newfoundland. A group of archaeologists and volunteers rushed to discover as many parts as possible before tides take it back to the ocean.
The area in Newfoundland where the ship was found is known for its many shallow rocks. They have caused many vessels to sink in the past. The province's archaeology office says there are potentially thousands of shipwrecks among the rocky coastline. They say that's why it may be difficult to pinpoint the exact origin of the vessel.
Now, if you have any news tips or feedback for our show, please feel free to email us at news.today@ntd.com.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm here to tell you about my new product from MyPillow, towels that actually work. Watch this absorbency test. Here's another towel that we randomly went out and bought. Here's one of my towels with the nice design. I don't know if you can see this, but you could line a swimming pool with this. I mean, this is crazy. Get rid of it. Towels that actually work. What a concept. I'm interrupting this commercial to let you know you can get our 6-piece My Towels, regular $69.98, now only $29.98. Or you can save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels, made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Also, we have bath sheets, bath towels, washcloths, hand towels, and so much more. And the best part, with your promo code, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all My Towels. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
I didn't ask to lose my mother or to be abused at 5 years old. I didn't ask to be kicked out of my house with nowhere to go.
I'm so sorry.
I didn't ask for any of this. But I did ask for help, and Covenant House was there. Thanks to their love and support, and to generous people like you, I got what I needed to take control of my life.
For the young people who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations, Covenant House is there providing safety, hope, and a brighter future. Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. 1 in 10 young adults will experience homelessness this year. Your gift can help reach them when they need it most.
I didn't ask for my parents and my family to disown me. I didn't ask to end up in a homeless shelter. The beauty of it all is that I found Covenant House.
The need is overwhelming, but your monthly support will make sure no young person is ever turned away. Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today. If there's no Covenant House, where would I be today?
Your monthly gift is urgently needed to reach young people in communities like yours who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations. Show them they're loved and not alone. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
The bipartisan border security deal fails to advance, but a key Senate vote looms on a foreign aid package for Ukraine and Israel. What's at stake?
And the U.S. Supreme Court hears oral arguments today in a case that could have sweeping implications for this election and beyond. Our legal correspondent has the latest.
Former President Trump speaking at Mar-a-Lago as the nation's highest court hears the ballot case that'll determine his eligibility for a second term. What he has to say about the legal fighting.
Presidential candidate Nikki Haley staying optimistic. She's downplaying her loss to none of the above in Tuesday's Nevada primary. Hear why her campaign has known for months it wouldn't spend a day or a dollar in Nevada. Will the Travis Kelce-Taylor Swift romance overshadow the Super Bowl? Fans in Las Vegas react to the phenomenon.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Tragic update on the crashed helicopter carrying 5 Marines. Officials now confirming those 5 soldiers are dead.
They were conducting a training exercise flying from Nevada to California when the helicopter went missing. Authorities later located the remains of the aircraft near Pine Valley, California.
The Marines' identities have not been shared. An investigation is underway. And the Senate voted yesterday to take the first step toward debating a major foreign aid package. It includes assistance for Ukraine and Israel without border security provisions.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on a key test vote that looms ahead.
On this vote,
the Senate is expected to hold a procedural vote at a 60-vote threshold as soon as Thursday. It's not clear if there will be enough votes to move forward, as Republicans are demanding an agreement to have their amendments to the underlying bill considered. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer wrote on X that Republicans first insisted the only way to pass this national security supplemental was with border. Now they are saying the only way it can proceed is without it. Today I will give them both options. If the package passes out of the chamber, the Senate will be on a collision course with the House, where many Republicans oppose sending further aid to Ukraine. The move to take up a foreign aid package without border provisions comes after Senate Republicans blocked a foreign aid package that included a border deal, provisions that set a threshold of 5,000 illegal entries a day. Before shutting crossings down angered conservatives. Congressman Dan Crenshaw says the process of the bipartisan border negotiation was flawed from the get-go on the part of Republicans.
You put one person in there, you make it completely secret. They didn't do a communications plan with everybody surrounding them. They didn't tell anybody what was in it. Immigration law is extremely complicated.
The foreign aid package includes billions of dollars to support Ukraine in its fight against Russia and security assistance for Israel, as well as humanitarian assistance for civilians in Gaza, the West Bank, and Ukraine. Senator Ben Cardin says aid to Ukraine is absolutely necessary, and that if Russia wins in Ukraine, it doesn't stop there.
Goes on to other countries in Europe, and it risks United States military personnel getting involved if they attack a NATO country.
The White House publicly expressed support for the security package without border provisions ahead of the vote. It's been an eventful week for Republicans, which saw some key GOP priorities fail to take hold, including the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and the defeat of a standalone Israel aid package. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Now an update on a recreational center in Boston being used to house illegal immigrants.
The decision to repurpose the center in a predominantly black and brown neighborhood made nationwide headlines last week. The city's mayor was on the podcast Java with Jimmy yesterday, saying the center is now almost full.
They said they're almost at capacity, which means they're probably, capacity was 400 people total. So they had been kind of bringing families in as they've needed space.
Most of the migrants were staying at Boston's International Airport before being moved to the center. The state of Massachusetts made the decision to house people at the airport as one of the few places left with enough space.
The recreational center in Boston also falls under state administration, and the city doesn't have much influence over what happens there. Massachusetts is the only state in the country with a right to shelter law, meaning it has to provide housing to anyone who needs it.
In Texas, a grand jury has indicted an illegal immigrant on capital murder charges. Fox News reports that the indictment shows 23-year-old Rafael Govea Romero killed 16-year-old Lisbeth Medina while trying to commit a burglary, robbery, or sexual assault.
The exact circumstances are not clear yet. Police determined that somebody broke into the victim's house a month before the murder. Medina's mother says the break-in could have a connection with her daughter's murder.
Authorities say the suspect may have stolen the victim's phone after killing her. Police found him by tracking the phone's location. And to speak with us about Congress's recent efforts regarding the border, we're joined by Drew Allen, author of America's Last Stand and host of the Drew Allen Show podcast. Drew, welcome. How do you assess the House Republicans and their efforts to secure the border in light of this two recently failed votes?
Well, the Republican Party is doing what they seem to do best, which is sabotage themselves when they have these opportunities. Look, the border bill that was proposed by the Senate, it really wasn't a border bill. That was like after giving money to Ukraine, after giving money away to this and that issue. That was a middle finger to the American people, which was basically going to legalize illegal immigration. They gaslit us about it, told us that it was actually going to secure the border. But this is politics. The Democrats own the border. Joe Biden, Mayorkas, they're responsible for this illegal invasion. It's unprecedented in our history. And now they're, during election year, trying to blame Republicans for this, and Republicans are falling for it. And so, now we have them failing to impeach Mayorkas in Congress, and there's no upside for the Republicans for this. The reality is, look, they're not going to succeed in getting rid of Mayorkas because, of course, it goes to the Senate, and they're not gonna vote to actually remove him. But that didn't stop the Democrats from impeaching Donald Trump twice in the House and sending that to the Senate, where Trump was ultimately exonerated. The Republicans have to understand that right now they're in a battle. Part of it is superficial. It's about propaganda right now. They're trying to blame Republicans. So the American people, not just Republicans, but the American people are desperate for someone to stand up and say, hey, there's got to be accountability here. We're actually not going to allow the Democrats to continue to do this and keep the border open. And the Republicans can't even make a superficial show.
Yeah, so how do you think these two failed votes could impact the Republicans standing on the border in the eyes of the public, and especially in regards to the election?
Well, it's horrendous for them because they're going to squander an opportunity. Because right now, the American people are looking for someone to protect them and defend them. And that's the opposition party, the Republican Party. And if voters don't believe, if the Republican base doesn't believe that Republicans are serious about actually standing against the Democrats and doing something about the border and trying to even pretend to hold somebody accountable, which in this case is Mayorkas, who should be held accountable because of what he's done, he's guilty. Well, they're going to enfeeble themselves with their own voters. And also, look, it's mutually assured destruction. What prevents the Democrats from continuing their lawless route? Well, it's the idea that, look, if we stack the Supreme Court, well, maybe Republicans will do it too. But the Republicans are, it's like the Cold War. The Democrats are lining up nuclear silos, and the Republicans are dismantling their own. So it's crazy. The Democrats are pushing the envelope, and there's no pushback.
And how do you see this impacting Speaker Mike Johnson's leadership, or what does it say about his leadership also at this time?
Well, it just shows right now, I mean, he's not really able to wrangle everybody together. He doesn't have the hold over the party like Nancy Pelosi did, to her credit, holding everyone together. And it just shows a Republican Party that continues to be in disarray, and which at a historic moment in our history, when we desperately need an opposition party to stand up for the American people, everyone, regardless of your background or even your party affiliation, this is affecting all of us. And we do not have a party that's willing to do it. It's like the exact wrong people in these positions of power when we need them at this time in history.
And we're seeing separate bills coming forward to address funding for the wars happening abroad. How do you think that this failed Senate deal, which would have included that funding, may impact those wars and, broader global security?
Well, look, you've got many Americans in this country that are tired of feeling like Americans are last. We're tired of sending, unlimited billions and tens of billions of dollars overseas to, secure Ukraine's border or help other countries out when we don't even take care of our own country. We have an administration that is fundamentally facilitating an invasion at our own border, and then we want to go and pay for other wars elsewhere. I mean, it's not jiving with the American people. And if the Republicans also aren't willing to play politics, they will get massacred in these elections coming up this year. Because it doesn't matter that the Democrats are responsible for it all. If the Republicans are going to be spineless and they're not going to stand for anything, well, nobody's going to support them either. It's crazy.
All right. Thank you so much. Great to speak with you. Drew Allen, author of America's Last Stand and host of the Drew Allen Show podcast. Coming up, how will the Supreme Court rule in a case that could decide former President Trump's future as a presidential candidate? We talked to our legal correspondent to find out.
And a special election is underway in New York to find a replacement for George Santos, who was removed from Congress in December. Hear what voters have to say. More in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
One in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, not enough energy to play. All around the world, hunger is affecting children's physical and mental health. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. Kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. Conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we are fed up. Fed up that hunger devours dreams. Fed up that hunger destroys joy. Fed up with the fact that hunger eats childhood. Help us feed the futures of children all over the world by visiting getfedupnow.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients, prevent children from dropping out of school, support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give before December 31st can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Having your childhood eaten away by hunger is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit getfedupnow.org.
All right, I'm at the house, and I'm gonna head inside. Okay, come on, this door. I'm in the house.
What do you see?
Let me check the den. There's nothing in the den. Let me check the kitchen. There's no one downstairs, it looks like. I don't know. Let me head upstairs.
What do you see?
What the? Did you shut this bathroom door?
No.
Oh,
What?
It's not here.
What do you mean?
The gun's not here.
What? Where is it?
Oh my God.
What's going on?
Cam.
Oh my God, what's going
Cameron, are you in there? Open the door. Cam, please, please, open the door, Cameron. Come on, Cam.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wright. We thank you for joining us and watching America's Hope here on NTD News. Bottom line is, I know you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but let's give you some good news in the midst of the bad news. Watch us nightly, right here on NTD News, for a full dose of America's Hope.
Welcome back. Joining us now is our legal correspondent, Arlene Richards. Today, 9 justices on the Supreme Court hear oral arguments in the case about whether Donald Trump can be on the Colorado ballot. The case involves significant questions about how to interpret Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which bars insurrectionists from holding an office. Now, Arlene, you've been listening to these oral arguments. Can you give us a sense for how where the court may be leaning?
Well, I'm not sure where they're leaning, but I think they're most interested in whether Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection. That's what's key here, right? And they want to know, they're relying upon the factual findings that they received from the lower courts. And the lower courts have already decided that he did in fact engage in an insurrection. And they have concluded that the event was an insurrection. Now, this largely comes from the January 6th committee's extensive report, which is what these challengers are relying upon to make the argument that an insurrection occurred. It's important to note that Trump's attorneys haven't had the opportunity to present evidence to the contrary. The Colorado courts expedited the matter and limited their ability to gather such extensive evidence. Now, the other thing is to watch for is whether the court will take issue with the lower court's factual findings that Trump did in fact engage in an insurrection. Now, I think this is going to be crucial for Trump's attorneys to clearly define this word insurrection and make a distinct comparison between what happened on January 6th and what happened during the Civil War. Now, the law in question is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And what that says is that after the Civil War, in the aftermath of that, they wanted to prevent anyone who was involved on the Confederacy from getting into office. So the focus here will likely be on that history as well as the Constitution.
Looking more deeply at Section 3 and what it states, what are Trump's arguments in regards to that?
Well, Section 3, the language of Section 3 is going to be crucial here. This is what this case depends on, as well as how the court interprets it. And generally, the understanding is that the law prohibits people who previously took an oath of office from holding future offices if they participated in an insurrection. It's also called the disqualification clause, which is what the challengers want to happen in this case. They want Trump to be disqualified from the ballot. Now, the relevant language of that law states no person shall hold any office under the United States who, having previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So Trump's attorneys here have argued that the president is not an officer of the United States. President Trump did not engage in an insurrection, and only Congress can enforce Section 3. So what is the Supreme Court considering here? Today, they're considering, is the president an officer? Did Trump engage in this insurrection? And is Congress required to enforce Section 3? So at the end of the day, this is an election case, and whatever decision is made will likely impact all future presidential elections.
And Arlene, given the seriousness of this case, what could the Supreme Court do?
Well, let me give you a few scenarios. So let's start off with number one. The court can rule that the Colorado court got it right and Trump should be disqualified. Now, legal observers estimate that this is the least likely conclusion because it could cause a dramatic turn of events and shake the foundations of American democracy. Second, Trump is not an officer of the United States. They could decide that. So this could perhaps be the best outcome for the former president because it could prevent state courts from applying Section 3 to him at all. Now, one of the arguments has been that a state court cannot apply federal law. Third, the Supreme Court could agree that Congress has the power to remove Trump from the ballot. So they may toss the case to Congress. Now, several legal scholars who had submitted an amicus brief in this case are worried that if the justices send this case to Congress, it could lead to political violence because it would effectively invalidate Americans' votes for President Trump. And then lastly, they could remand the decision to state court for further deliberation. So another option would be to challenge the lower court's reasoning and send the case back for them to review it again based on an analysis that the Supreme Court provides, whatever that may be. This would also delay the matter and perhaps cause more unrest. So this decision could also impact the federal election case brought by Special Counsel Jack Smith. He hasn't said Trump engaged in an insurrection, but he is charging Trump with conspiring to obstruct a governmental proceeding. This case could also affect the January 6 individuals who are themselves bringing some cases in the future, and depending on how the court ultimately defines insurrection.
Oh, there's a lot for the court to consider here. Thank you so much for your report, Arlene.
Thank you.
And Hawaii is the first state trying to block former President Trump from the state's 2024 ballot. A related bill has passed its first hurdle in the state legislature.
Current state law does not allow Hawaii to remove Trump based on the insurrection clause in the 14th Amendment. Hawaii News Now reports that the state's Senate Judiciary Committee passed a bill that would change this.
The bill, which now advances to the full floor, would establish a process for the chief elections officer to disqualify Trump. According to Hawaii News Now, the bill drew over 300 complaints or negative testimonies, with only about 20 favoring it.
In other election news, the Biden campaign is now ramping up coordination with lawmakers to reach voters nationwide. Senior officials for the Biden campaign are meeting with House Democrats today.
That's to outline details to campaign plans after Super Tuesday. The campaign aides will discuss their general election message and outlook for the year. They'll also focus on how lawmakers can help activate and engage supporters.
House Democrats are in Northern Virginia for their annual retreat. President Biden will travel there later today to deliver his own message to lawmakers. And presidential candidate Nikki Haley is making light of her loss to none of the above in Tuesday's Nevada primary. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the candidate, who says she's already looking ahead to the primary in her home state of South Carolina.
Haley called the Nevada primary a scam, speaking on Fox 11 Los Angeles.
We knew months ago that we weren't going to spend a day or a dollar in Nevada because it wasn't worth it.
Haley says her campaign didn't even count Nevada, and the state wasn't something they were looking at.
Our focus is on South Carolina, Michigan, Super Tuesday. So if you look what we did in Iowa and you look what we did in New Hampshire, we're continuing to grow. That's what matters.
University of Nevada Associate Professor Rebecca Gill says Haley losing to the none of these candidates ballot option was in part due to a media campaign by Trump allies. She brings up the head of the Nevada Republican Party, who she says promoted the idea in interviews and speeches.
Coming out and saying, we're going to run this caucus, we're going to be able to guarantee that Trump will get all of Nevada's delegates, and also you should vote in the primary against Nikki Haley.
Gill feels Haley should have invested more in the state and tried to activate more moderate Republicans.
I think they really underestimated the danger for her, because it's easy to say, Trump's not in this primary, so clearly we're going to win.
The second vote is a caucus on Thursday organized by the Nevada Republican Party with just Trump on that ballot. Only the winner of that caucus will receive any delegates, making Haley's defeat more symbolic than meaningful. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
A federal judge denied Trump's motion for a mistrial in the E. Jean Carroll defamation case yesterday. Trump's attorneys made the request on the premise that Carroll failed to preserve key evidence. Trump's defense team argued for a mistrial when Carroll admitted deleting an unknown number of death threats in her testimony. Carroll's lawyers have made the purported death threats a key reason to seek millions of dollars in damages.
Judge Lewis Kaplan said granting Trump's request would, in his words, have been entirely pointless. He said it would only mean the case would start over. The judge said Trump failed to prove the missing messages would have helped his defense, and that the jury was instructed to consider Carroll's deletions in deliberations. Judge Kaplan also denied Trump's request for sanctions. He criticized Trump's attorneys for making the motion for a mistrial in front of the jury.
The jury hearing the case awarded Carroll over $83 million in damages. That amount will not be official until the judges issue his final judgment on the verdict. Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson is suspending her campaign. The author made the announcement on Wednesday, a day after she came in third in the Nevada primary with less than 3% of the vote. The former spiritual advisor to Oprah Winfrey launched her campaign last March. Williamson also ran in 2020, dropping out to endorse Senator Bernie Sanders, who ultimately lost to Joe Biden. Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips is now the sole major candidate running against the incumbent president.
Early voting is currently underway in New York's special election to replace the vacancy left by George Santos, who was expelled from Congress in December. Republicans currently maintain a very narrow majority in the House, but Democrats may have the early edge in his district.
The opening salvo in the 2024 election cycle is on. Early voting in the special election to replace George Santos. Voters of all stripes say more than anything, they want moderation and political leaders who will work together.
I want a sane person in the government. I'm done.
I don't like the direction the country is going currently, and I think it's an important election, and we have to go towards the middle more.
The issues motivating many voters in this suburban New York, largely Jewish district: Israel, abortion, crime, and taxes, but seemingly none bigger than
immigration. How big a concern for immigration?
Number one, you have a chaotic situation at the border. You're spending a ton of money to try to manage the situation. We don't have jobs for the people when they come in. They're being dispersed. We lose complete control over where they are once they're in the country.
The district is mostly in Nassau County on New York's Long Island and a small sliver in Queens. Total active voters just over 530,000. In early voting, more than 31,000 have already cast their ballots. Nassau County, where most voters live, breaks it down by party, giving us a glimpse into who, so far, is coming out. Through 4 days of voting in Nassau, 43% are registered Democrats, 35% registered Republicans, and 19% unaffiliated with any party. Democrat Tom Suozzi has run all out in a short but well-funded campaign, raising $4.5 million compared to his Republican challenger, Mazi Pilla, who's raised only $1.3 million.
Tom Suozzi will work with both parties.
To date, Suozzi and his allies have nearly doubled Pilla and her backers in spending on advertising in the pricey New York market, $13 million to $6.7 million. With a potential rematch looming this November between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and Congress narrowly divided, voters here in this suburban battleground district see the outcome next Tuesday as sending an early message to both parties.
Coming up, President Biden is in Virginia today with Democrats talking about how to take back the House majority this election year. NTD's Melina Weisskopf is there.
You know, these kids grow so fast. Cherish every little moment you get with them. Tyler, he's 10, and little Daryl, he's 12. Being a single dad, it is hard, really hard. I've been there since day one. I know how it is, you know, not to have nothing. I don't really get paid much. There's been times I went hungry, made sure they ate. There ain't a thing I wouldn't do for them.
Millions of our neighbors are facing hunger. Rising food prices are making it tougher to put food on the table. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
At least now I know I gotta, help if I need it.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. We are getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you use your credit card, you'll receive this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you're a part of a movement working together to ensure that everyone has the food and resources we all need to thrive.
If you're hungry, if they got it, they'll feed you. People just got to realize, places like this do exist that will help you.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org. Working together, we can end hunger in America.
Freedom is not free, and neither is the truth. In order to bring you the facts, our reporters are out there on the front lines getting the true story. Some of them served 10 years of prison in China. We've been censored on social media. Our Hong Kong printing offices were set on fire, and we've been repeatedly attacked by the Chinese Communist Party. But no matter what, we believe that you deserve the truth, and so we'll continue to bring the truth to life. Head on over to getepic.com and try honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
A friend of mine, she told me about Bonatti. He was the only one to address all 4 deaths as quickly as possible. And if you're to that point where you can't take it anymore, like I was, do your research, find out who the best is, and get it done.
Visit AskBonatti.com.
We're in the nation's capital asking the important questions so that you're in the know. Join us daily, Monday through Friday, on the Capitol Report on NTD News.
Welcome back. President Biden later this afternoon will join Democrats at their retreat in Northern Virginia. Democrats are huddling at the Lansdowne Resort today, strategizing on how to take back the House majority this election year. NTD's Melina Wisecup joins us live from the retreat. Melina, what can you tell us about their messaging?
Hi, Steph. Hi, Chris. Good to be with you guys this afternoon. So one recurring theme that we've heard from House Democrats here at this retreat is they're trying to paint Republicans as the party that's chaos and dysfunction, unable to get anything done in the halls of Congress. And that's perfect timing for them. We saw this week multiple failures on the part of House Republicans to pass certain pieces of legislation. For example, they were unable to pass that resolution to impeach DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. And then immediately after that, they failed to pass a standalone Israel aid package. And then we see, of course, what's going on now in the Senate. They're forced to drop the border security provisions out of that national security supplemental because of Republican opposition. So Democrats are really trying to hound that message that in a Republican majority in the House, they're not able to pass legislation, saying that this is the least productive Congress that we've had in the past 90 years. We heard that message repeatedly throughout today. Now, in addition to trying to take jabs at Republicans, Democrats are also trying to lay out what will be top issues for them during this election season, such as by pushing for abortion rights, lowering the cost of housing and child care, trying to push for immigration reform, etc. But importantly enough, they're also trying to get their message straight on the economy, because we know that will be a key issue heading into this election cycle. As a matter of fact, we will hear from House Democrats on the Financial Services Committee here in the next half hour. Steph.
Yeah, and the economy certainly is a key issue heading into the election as we recover from record high inflation. Melina, this retreat comes against a backdrop of Biden seeing continuously low poll numbers. A recent NBC poll, for example, shows President Biden is more than 20 points behind the Republican presidential frontrunner. What do Democrats have to say about how they'll overcome the unfavorable polls and the president's performance?
Well, this is clearly on the tops of all the reporters' minds here, is how Democrats will separate themselves from those low poll numbers that we're seeing directed at President Biden. And their message is that Americans just aren't feeling the impact of what they were able to accomplish under a Democrat-controlled Congress under President Biden. They give the example of the Inflation Reduction Act, for example, which gave tax credits for Americans to transition to renewable energy. It also addressed lowering insulin costs and other provisions there. But they're saying that a lot of the the programs that were in that Inflation Reduction Act have not yet been become into effect, so that Americans are just unable to feel the impacts of it. We'll show you what they're saying in response to those low polling numbers of President Biden.
And we're looking for a soundbite just here, if we can cue that up.
We have work to do in making sure we're communicating to communities what we have done.
Unemployment at record lows, inflation is cooling, and wages are rising. But we know that not everyone is feeling the benefits of that economic recovery yet, and House Democrats are ready to finish the job.
So that's exactly the kind of messaging, guys, that we'll be seeing throughout this election cycle as we head into this very crucial elections for Democrats to try to take back the House of Representatives. And like you all mentioned at the top, we will hear more from President Biden later today at 4 p.m.
All right. Thank you so much, Melina. Great for that update. Thank you.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen.
Hi, I'm Caleb, and this is my story. I was born with osteogenesis imperfecta, or brittle bone disease. I have broken my bones almost 200 times, and I have had 11 surgeries. But I didn't let that stop me. I love to bike ride, climb, race, and I'm learning how to stand and walk. But I can only do all of this because of generous people like you and Shriners Hospitals for Children.
Because of people like you, Shriners Hospitals for Children has helped more than 1.3 million kids just like me, regardless of their family's ability to pay.
Shriners Hospitals for Children is only able to provide this world-class, life-changing medical care because of the generous gifts of people just like you.
Because of you, I can ride my bike. I can play basketball.
Because of people like you, I can run.
I can smile.
Will you send your love to the rescue today?
When you go to loveshriners.org right now and give just 63 cents a day, you're helping kids just like me.
Like me. Like me.
When you give today, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of the love you gave to a kid just like me.
Your gift, no matter how small, can help a child today.
This is your moment to make a difference.
When you pick up your phone, I know you have it right there, and call to give. You're helping kids like me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, please call again or give right away at loveshriners.org.
Your gift makes a difference. Thank you for giving.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
For the day's top headlines and the news you need to know, tune in right here to NTD Evening News.
The Travis Kelce Taylor Swift romance is generating as much buzz ahead of Super Bowl Sunday as the game itself. Fans in Las Vegas reacted to the relationship's effect on the upcoming NFL championship game. And we have Andrew Thomas on that story.
The only ring Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce is thinking about is a Super Bowl ring. Speculation that he might propose to girlfriend Taylor Swift at center field has Swifties excited. But the pop icon is performing a concert Saturday on the other side of the world.
I know she's out in Japan, Tokyo maybe. So she's just
working on entertaining them, making sure she's ready for her performances and everything. But the Super Bowl, we'll worry about if she can make it.
Some hardcore football fans couldn't care less.
It's a lot of drama. That's what I think. It's football. It shouldn't be too much show, I guess.
But others in Las Vegas are embracing the Kelce Swift romance. Fans on the Strip Wednesday said Swift has been positive for the NFL.
I do. I think her attending will bring a new eye to the sport. I think there will be a lot of women who will probably shift their attention to football, and I think that's going to be a really great thing for them. So I think she's a great asset to the NFL.
Well, we are big Taylor Swift fans, and we've been watching football. Well, I've been watching football with my daughters because they love Taylor Swift. So I feel like she's not going to overshadow anything. I feel like it just adds more people to the game.
Is the Kelce Swift phenomenon impacting Super Bowl ticket prices? At least one secondary market was offering the most expensive tickets in Super Bowl history Monday.
Well, what I can tell you is that during the regular season, after her first appearance at Arrowhead Stadium, in that first 24-hour period, we saw a massive increase in both sales as well as page visits for the Chiefs, more than at any other time during the regular season.
The average purchase price on TickPick was about $9,800 on Monday morning. That's nearly double the final average price of almost $5,800 for last year's game between the Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. Now, is it because of Taylor Swift's there or what? I don't know, but I know it's higher than before, right? Yeah, so, I mean, I can't afford it. So either way, even if it was at the lower price, $5,000, I don't think I can afford that either.
Super Bowl 58 will kick off Sunday, February 11th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. The NFL championship game will be broadcast on CBS. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
What's everyone's favorite dish for Super Bowl Sunday? We asked people around New York's Madison Square Garden to get a bite at the question.
What's your favorite Super Bowl party food?
My favorite Super Bowl party food's got to be chicken wings and some chips and salsa.
Pigs in a blanket.
Pizza and wings for sure.
Hot wings with Parmesan cheese on it, a little truffle, and jalapenos.
Be either chicken wings or nachos.
Buffalo wings, mild.
Grapes. Yeah, they're nice and crisp. They're very juicy.
Buffalo wings, that's the only answer.
It's got to be chicken wings. It's a classic. It's delicious. It's great.
Got to be nachos.
Hot dog or popcorn.
You don't watch the Super Bowl, but you watch the World Cup. Yeah. So what's your favorite World Cup food to eat?
I like to eat pizza and have a beer with the pizza. So barbecue pizza.
Favorite Super Bowl party food?
Dip with nachos. I like to change it up because it's Super Bowl, so people bring different kinds of food, so I like to change it, nothing in particular.
I prefer grapes. Yeah, definitely. It's healthy. It's healthy, you know, it tastes nice, you know, fruit's good for you.
There's just something about eating buffalo wings and watching football, you know. There's nothing that goes better than, you know, a Sunday, NFL, and buffalo wings, in my opinion.
Easy access. You have one, you can have 10, you can have 20.
Mozzarella cheese. Put on top of a dish like a pan, but then I'm Korean, so you get some kimchi and then you put it on top of the frying pan at the same time.
Mozzarella cheese, that will go far.
Now, I'm from the South, from Atlanta, so lemon pepper wings have always been my favorite, but I also like just a classic like buffalo wing.
Chicken wings are just fantastic. Everybody likes chicken wings.
How many wings do you usually eat in one game?
Me personally, I could probably, career high is probably like 10.
I've been so accustomed to this. Every year the family gets together, friends come over.
Do you prefer takeout or home cooked?
Depends on who you are. If you got a good recipe or something, I'd love to try that, but if you aren't feeling confident about it, definitely go with the safe bet.
You gotta have home kimchi from home. I prefer takeout if the place is good, you know. So if the place has a reputation for good wings, I'll take that. But I mean, for certain things, yeah, home cooking is good for like mac and cheese and biscuits.
Prefer home cook. Well, takeout not too bad, but I prefer home cook if I have the option.
Yeah, preferably like a mom's or like a grandmother's.
I say takeout. It's the best way to go, the safest way.
Home cooked, because it's important and a lot of fun. But if you run out of time, takeout always works. You can also order bibimbap from my restaurant.
It's always takeout, always.
And while excitement is clearly building for Super Bowl Sunday, dog lovers can look forward to another big game this weekend.
That's right. The ever-popular Puppy Bowl is marking its 20th anniversary this year. The matchup features more than 130 puppies from over 70 shelters across the U.S. The event will be broadcast on multiple platforms, including Animal Planet, Discovery, and TBS.
In addition to providing entertainment, the 3-hour special aims to promote pet adoption. It's a cause that has always been central to the Puppy Bowl.
To celebrate the milestone, Animal Planet has partnered with various brands, including Bark Social, to create watch parties and adoption experiences.
Caught on camera out of Colorado. Police officers in the town of Wheat Ridge answered the call to round up 3 llamas in the snow this week. The llamas were tracked down after they wandered away from home.
Police say the trio, named Sophia, Tina, and Napoleon, apparently wanted to play in some fresh snow. Officers managed to put the animals on leashes and safely return them home.
And a revolutionary new satellite launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida early this morning. Take a look.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Full power engines and liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Pace.
The NASA Pace lifted off at 1:30 a.m. Eastern aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. The launch was initially set for Tuesday morning, but was delayed twice due to bad weather.
NASA says Pace will gather data from the Earth's ocean and atmosphere and provide an unprecedented look at our planet's microscopic marine life and the particles in the air.
Its 3-year mission will shed light on how aerosols and clouds, as well as phytoplankton in the ocean, serve as indicators for ocean health and global warming.
More space news. Astronomers have uncovered more evidence that one of Saturn's smallest moons is hiding an ocean beneath its icy surface.
A French research team suspects the ocean is about 12 to 18 miles beneath the moon's ice shell.
Finding a source of water could help scientists gain a better understanding of where to search for habitable worlds. That's because water is essential to life as we know it. The latest findings were published Wednesday in the journal Nature.
And that's all for today's news.
Thank you for tuning in.
Feel free to reach out to us with news tips or feedback at news.today@ntd.com.
We'll be back with more stories tomorrow.